At least 10 people are dead and over 300,000 people have been ordered or warned to evacuate as wildfires continue to devastate parts of Southern California. Some residents have been quick to blame Democratic leaders in the state, including Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Let's turn now to Democratic strategist Mariel Sáez and Republican strategist Matt Gorman. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Mariel, I want to start with you by listening to a clip from our own Jonathan Vigliotti, who questioned Mayor Bass earlier this week.
Mayor, LA County is in a panic state. For several hours, we watched as hundreds of homes in a neighborhood burned to the ground. We did not see a single fire engine. There was fear and there was a lot of confusion. Shortly after the fire started, a press release was put out warning of this fire behavior. My question to you is, what explains this lack of preparation and rapid response?
Let me just say, first and foremost, my number one focus, and I think the focus of all of us here with one voice, is that we have to protect lives, we have to save lives, and we have to save homes. We will absolutely do an evaluation to look at what worked, what didn't work.
Obviously, we know President-elect Trump has been quite critical, not only of the mayor, but also Governor Newsom as well, putting out a number of posts on Truth Social and talking to some of us reporters earlier this week on Capitol Hill. But is there some validity to some of this criticism that these leaders are facing, and particularly when we're talking about someone like Governor Newsom, who appears to have higher, potentially presidential ambitions? Could this be a black eye for him in the future?
Well, certainly there's going to be time for reflection and an examination of the immediate response. But right now, you know, the hard work of containing fires, saving lives, consoling the survivors is first and foremost. And so I think what we want to see from our leaders right now is both empathy, but also action. And you're seeing that from the federal government, the state and local coming together. You saw President Biden on the ground. You've seen him immediately approve major disaster declaration, deploy federal resources, coordinate across states, also bringing in partners from Canada. So really a whole of government exercise to contain fires, to save lives. And we need to see that continue in the days and weeks to come. We also have to remember this is going to be a very difficult and long recovery for the residents. They've lost lives, homes, churches, schools, also a sense of peace and security. And so I think it's important for the president-elect and incoming administration to understand and acknowledge that this is going to also fall on their shoulders. It's going to be important to work with those state and local partners to see the residents through this absolute tragedy. And then, you know, doing the important work of examining the response and improving it going forward.
Yeah, Matt, at the same time, I mean, the president-elect did say that he would be willing to work with the leaders of California once he takes office. But that being said, I mean, we've oftentimes seen some of these major natural disasters get politicized, most recently with Hurricanes Helene. I mean, you know, does the president-elect need to tone it down a bit?
Well, again, we're playing their game now. This is the same administration with Kamala Harris trying to play campaign games with Ron DeSantis, talking about phone calls in the middle of a campaign. Where this is also the same administration who many times during, God forbid, terrible mass shootings, who have absolutely no problem politicizing it, talking immediately while things are still happening on the ground about the politics of it and what needs to be done. So I have zero sympathy for this administration, whether they're in California or in Washington, because we're now playing by their game. So we're going to be talking very much so that the critical response that Karen Bass had when she was down in Ghana had to be shamed back. Gavin Newsom having no idea in an interview with CNN about what the effects were, about there was no water coming out of the hydrant, saying the local people are dealing with that. And again, when Joe Biden was in the state yesterday talking about the response, but then pivoting and saying, well, the good news is I am a great-grandfather now. So the response has been completely out of touch, and they're going to be held accountable for that. And in many ways, what we've seen now is years of bad policy, candidly, whether that's with the proposition that they passed allowing for more reservoirs to be built, nowhere built. The insurance laws and regulations that have really hampered the market in this state and will hurt it as they rebuild. It's unfortunately now coming to pass, and it's a very terrible scenario.
And turning gears a little bit, obviously, in terms of the president-elect, obviously the other big story of the day, of course, being his sentencing. You know, considering he's not going to face any penalties in this hush money case and pretty much all these other cases appear to be behind him. Does this embolden the president-elect politically as he prepares to take office later this month?
I don't think it makes much of a difference. I believe very firmly that this whole last year, if you were talking about 2020 or any events in the past like that, and not talking about what voters are in the future, you were missing out. And I think, look, this is now done. It is set aside, whether the case is against him or now this. Let's just focus on what he's going to take office on. He's going to take office on trade, immigration, and the like. I think he and others will do well about focusing on that and not something in the past.
Yeah, and Mariel, I mean, what do you think we can expect come day one? I mean, obviously, we know the president-elect this weekend is meeting with a number of different House Republicans, House Freedom Caucus committee chairs, and others. But when he was on Capitol Hill earlier this week with respect to reconciliation, he kept saying, well, I could do one or two, which is different from earlier this week where he also said he wants one big, beautiful bill. So, kind of where do you see things going from a policy and legislative standpoint to lay the ground for him when he takes office on the 20th?
Sure. Well, the president-elect was really elected on his promise to lower costs for the American people. And as we start to see conversations unfold within the Republican caucus with the incoming administration, the focus has really not been on that issue. It's been on how much can we cut government spending? How much can we cut these critical programs that Americans rely on in order to pass and pay for tax cuts for the wealthy at the end of the day? And so, I think Matt's right. The president-elect has an opportunity to come in and do the people's business, but, he's working with really slim margins, a very tight majority in both the House and the Senate. We're going to see these conversations unfold, but unfortunately, they're not really focused at all on the priorities they laid out in their campaigns and their promises to working people.
I mean, Matt, very briefly, do you think the longer they deliberate on this 1 versus 2 track that this is going to slow down the president-elect's agenda in any way?
No, he hasn't even taken office yet. So the 100-day clock hasn't even started. What I'm more focused on, honestly, is, look, Thune clearly wants 2. Johnson, with a slim margin, wants to get as much done as possible with 1. That is, I think, what's going to be key is who is he listening to? Who ultimately wins this little internecine battle? That's what's going to tell me as we go forward in reconciliation between the 2.
And yes or no, because we're looking ahead at confirmation hearings next week. Does he get all of his nominees through?
Barring right now, the answer is yes.
All right. Matt Gorman, Mariel, Sáez, we thank you so much for being with us.